I'm Erin Clapper, Program Specialist for the Migrant Education Program. Just a couple of reminders this morning. Number one, that this session is being recorded and will be posted in a couple of days on our Title I-C webpage. Please mute yourself unless asking a question. And then three, please try to use the chat box if you do have a question, just so we can have a record of the questions for future trainings. Thank you so much. And Marcy, it's all yours.
Okay, good morning. I'm not sure if any of you guys have used MIS2000 before, we are looking at the new version of MIS2000. Is Jose with us?
He is out there. Let's see if he can unmute. Jose, can you unmute? Yeah, we can't hear him.
Okay, that's fine. So I think you guys are using the new version of MIS2000. So if we have any current users who can confirm that, you know, if your MIS2000 looks different from this, let me know and we'll look at the old version of MIS2000. But for moving forward, we'll just train with the new version. So this is MIS2000, and it is a data system so that you can collect and submit COEs for your migrant children and their families. In addition to COEs, you also have the ability to enter services and additional information for those students. We're going to be looking primarily at the COE creation and submission today. So that's what I have here. When you open MIS2000, the app will show you the COEs that you need to work with. So I don't currently have any COEs that I need to actually work with. So it's showing me the last COE that I was working with. If you need to find a COE, you can expand find COEs and you can search. So the search, you can type in a child's name or their parent's name. You can type in a date or an ID number for a COE or an ID number for a student. Whatever you type in there, we're going to try to find the COEs that match your search criteria. And then your results will be displayed in the grid. And when you select one of the COEs, it's going to load that COE so that you can work with it below. Then you also have a filter here. You can change the way that you're searching. So I'm currently searching for COEs with all statuses. You can also search only approved COEs. And so any COEs that have not been approved would be filtered out of the search. You can search for COEs that require attention. These are COEs that you need to do something with. So if you're a recruiter and you've created the COE, it will, and you have not yet submitted it, it's going to show up under requires attention. If you are reviewing COEs and you need to do an action with that COE, like review it and advance it to the next reviewer, that too will show up under requires attention. I don't currently have any COEs that require my attention, so I don't have anything in there. And then the last filter is in process. And these are COEs that you have submitted and are waiting for approval. So anything that is pending approval, basically is under in process. So let's talk about COE statuses a little bit. You'll notice that the COE that I currently have selected has, we have the COE date and some information about the COE. But over here on the right-hand side, we have an incomplete status, and we have the COE ID number. So each COE, when it gets created, is assigned an identifier by MIS2000. So this is just that unique identifier for that COE. And the status, incomplete, is the first status that a COE has when you first create it. And that just means that the COE has been started, but you're not finished with it. So you're not ready for it to be reviewed. When you're finished with it, you'll submit it for review and advance it to the next step in the approval process. And at that time, the ownership and the status of the COE will change. A COE can be owned by a single person at a time, and that person who owns it is the only person who can make changes to it. So in this case, our owner of the COE, if we're not sure who that is, we can view the log to see all of the information about the COE's approval process. So again, this is a log of the approval or the reviewing of the COE for it to be approved. The first status here is incomplete, and we can see the date and time that was. Okay, so you're talking about the COE log. MIS2000, let's get this here. Right, so this has all of the entries from the approval process. So the COE that we're looking at is has only been created, it hasn't been submitted yet. So we only have the one entry for incomplete on the date and time that happened. So let's find one that has some more information. So this COE, if we view the log for it, has more information in the log. So we can see that it was created on the January 7th in 2019. And then the next stage was the first approval, the first review. So it was submitted as new. Then it was advanced again and verified, and it's currently owned by Kelly. So this is a demo database, so I'm not, these names may not, may or may not be real people, I'm not sure. Here's the whole log for the COE. So if the COE had been approved, there would be another entry that says accepted and would show that the COE had gone through that final approval. This one is in my database waiting for approval. All right, so to create a COE, we have a new COE button, and you'll notice that the COE that I have selected has approve and reject buttons. So those are the options for what you can do with a COE, whether that's submitting it or approving it, change depending on the status of that COE. So if we were to look at a COE that was in an incomplete status, our option would be submit COE for review. So the COEs themselves are, and the options for what you can do with them are dependent on the status of that COE. So if we wanted to make a new COE, we'll just click the new COE button, and you'll notice that the form below is empty and ready for me to fill it out. So I'm going to collapse my search so that I have more room on my screen, and I'm just going to complete this form. So as you work through the COE form, you can expand the sections as you work with them. And then for your next section, you can just expand it. And you'll notice that in the child data section, you have a button to add a student to the COE. So you're going to do this once for each kid on the COE, add student to COE. And you'll just fill out this form for each of the kids. So some of the drop-down lists allow multiple selections. So if only one of these applies, you'll just select one. If multiple apply, you'll select all of the options that apply to the student. And as I'm going through this, I am making some assumptions that you are familiar with COEs and know what these items mean. So I'm just filling out the form. So your multiple birth flag, your birth verification code, all of these are items, from your COE. And as you type, you'll notice that I'm just kind of typing things in, and it's auto-completing for me. So you can approach it that way, or you can use the drop down and scroll through the options and select the one that you want. So, whichever approach works better, for you is the one that you should use. Some of the drop downs are linked together. So for the school, you can select the school name, but then you don't need to select the school ID because those two things are linked together. So when you select the school, we're going to automatically fill in the school ID for you. Okay, so once you're finished with the student, you can either add another student to the COE using the Add Student to COE button. So you'll get another form for the next kid on the COE, and you can fill that out. If you make a mistake and you add one too many, you can just use the X to remove the student and then confirm. Once you're finished there, you can just move on to your next section. So we have qualifying moves and work. And again, all of these should look familiar if you're familiar with your COE. And you'll notice as I'm typing, things are moving around a little bit and to resize to make room for the values that I'm entering. Okay, and then some fields like like this one, are taking values that you've already entered. So the worker field is going to show you options from the names that you put in the family section. Then as with, you know, if you're doing a paper COE, or some things are required and some things aren't, depending on the options that you select. I don't need to complete section I here because it doesn't apply. So I'll just skip on to the next item. And then again, the options that you select will determine whether or not you need to do other things. So if I select option B, here actively sought new qualifying work and has recent history, I'm going to need to provide comments for that item. So you notice that it does say provide comment. If we tried to submit this COE at this point without adding those comments, we're going to get a message that tells us we need to provide comments. We need to complete that item. When you submit the COE, we check a list of items to make sure that they've been completed. Again, the qualifying work drop downs are linked to each other. So if you select the name, it's going to fill in the code for you. So you don't have to fill in both the name and the code. All right, so when you're finished with section 3, we'll just move on to our next section, which is here, the parent signatures. So we'll just sign the parent or interviewee will sign. You'll just click the sign button and they will sign in the available space. If you're not collecting an actual signature due to the pandemic, you have a checkbox. And so you can just indicate that, and the app will not require an actual signature and will let you advance the COE and submit it for review without having an actual signature. So when you do sign, it's going to automatically fill in the date for you. If for some reason that date is different, you can edit that. And then the last thing that you'll need to do will be your signature. So we can collapse our parent signatures and look at our staff signature. We can click the sign button and it is filling in a name that's associated with, with the account that I have here. And we can select the interviewer name, and if it's not listed, you can add it, or yes. Then you should be ready to submit, and you'll notice that at the top we have the submit COE for review button. Now it's available. So it's been grayed out. We couldn't actually click on it until now. I've done all of the things that are required to submit the COE. So I can now submit COE for review. When I do, it's going to bring up the COE log. Here's the log. You can type in comments if you have any about actually submitting the COE. The only time we require comments is when a reviewer is rejecting the COE. So if there's something wrong and you need to send that back to the recruiter to be reviewed, as a reviewer, you can reject it, but when you do, we require that you add some comments, and that's just so that you can let the reviewer, the recruiter rather, know why you're rejecting that COE. So I'll just click submit, and now that COE has a status of new. So you'll notice that I have set this, the routing up so that I review my own COEs. So the first step of the review, the new stage, is simply a review. It doesn't, so you just have an approve button and a reject button. So you'll approve the COE and advance it. We have to sign first. So we have, looks like our signatures might not be available, so that section might not be available. I might have been wrong. You guys may be using the old app. So let me switch over to it real quick. I apologize for that. Show you what this COE looks like in it. Okay. Looks like we have to review in the old app. I apologize for that. So in the old app, we have two different views. So let me recalibrate here just a minute. We, in the old app, let's kind of roll back a minute and look at entering that COE and what we would have to do to enter that COE in the old app. Because it looks like your signature stuff for reviewing is not available in the new app just now. So we're going to have to review in the old one. Right. So the COE that I just created, I've already submitted it. So we have two different views of COEs in the old app. So on the COE view, so you have this view menu. The COE view will let you see all of the COEs and search for COEs that have been approved. This is where you'll also create COEs like we just did in the new app. And it's all similar, it's just laid out a little bit differently. So to create a new COE, you're going to use the plus sign. So instead of having a button that says new COE, we have a plus sign. And the plus sign is consistently across the app is going to mean that you're creating a new record. So this plus sign, if we click that, it's going to give us an empty COE so that we can create that new COE. Similarly, the sections of the COE, instead of being tabular down the page, we have different panels for each section. So at the bottom, you see there are buttons to move to the different sections of the COE. So we have family and we have eligibility, which has 2 tabs. So that's your qualifying moves and work. And then we have children. And just like on the app that we were just looking at, there are 2, you can enter each student separately. So we have a new enrollment button that's going to give you that blank form to fill out your new enrollment for each of your students that are on that COE. So it's basically the same function, just a little laid out a little bit differently. And like in the app, the version of the app we were just looking at, each student, you'll perform that action once for each student. So a new enrollment for each student. And then the signatures, which was where we tripped up a little bit on the new app. So we have additional signatures for reviewer and state. So that's how, this is where you're going to do what we've done so far in creating the COE. Then in the original app, you can go to the draft COE view, and this is just navigating between the two different, whether you're approving COEs or not. So if you want to approve COEs, you'll be in the draft view. If you're creating or looking for COEs, you'll do that in the COE view. So in the draft view, we'll find the COE that I was trying to approve here. And you'll see that I can sign as the reviewer. So let's look at the log, and we'll see where I created that COE today, and where I submitted it and the status changed to new. So now I own it, and I need to sign it and approve it. As we were looking at just a few minutes ago, the COE log is available. There's a button to access it. It's on the right-hand side here, just view log. So that's the same log that we were just looking at. It just looks a little bit different. Okay, so we created the COE, we submitted it, and now we're the first reviewer, and we're going to review it. So that first step requires that we sign. So we can just, after reviewing the COE, and again, you can move to the different sections of the COE using the buttons at the bottom of the page. So you have your family and your eligibility section, and your children, and then your signatures. So you can look through the information and review it. And once you're ready to advance it, you can sign, and you'll select your name. And again, if your name's not listed there, you can just type it in. And then you're ready to approve. So you have at the top buttons for approve, delete, and reject. So we can approve the COE, and it's going to bring up the log. It shows us the entries that are already in the log, and it shows us the entry that's going to be created. So if there are any comments that you have about reviewing the COE, you can just type them in here. And these will be visible to anybody who can view the log for that COE. So we'll approve it, and that advances it to the next reviewer. I'm not sure if we have users who are the next reviewers with us, but just in case we do, let's take a look at that step. At the verified stage of the approval, in addition to the things that you would do to review your COE, so I'm sure that you have a list of things that you verify and check when you're reviewing COEs. At this stage, at the verified stage, you also need to approve the students individually. And when you do that, we're going to search the database and see if that student already exists or in the database, or if it's a new student. So to do that, we'll select the first kid on our COE, and we will approve child for COE. And it's going to fill in the student's name, so you can do search. And you'll get a list of all of the kids who match your search criteria. If for some reason, if you don't find them, you can also widen your search out. So you can, if names are commonly misspelled, so you can change your search a little bit and search again, and you might find the student. So if you do not find the student, there's a new child button. And that lets us know that this kid's just never been in MIS2000 before, so they're not in the database. If you do find the student, you will highlight the student in the grid and select child. So when we do this, we're letting MIS2000 know that this student has already been in the migrant program and they're already in your database. So we'll just select child. If there are discrepancies like the date of birth, it's going to tell you and give you an option to back out. So if the student is not the same person, I want to cancel this now. And I want to say new child. This is a student that I just made some things up. So I'm going to go ahead and continue because I know that it's the same person and I made a typo somewhere. So I'll click OK. And you'll notice that this column here that says searched now has a Y in it. And that's how I know that I've done that. I've performed that action for this student. So you'll do the same thing for every student listed until all of your kids have a Y in the searched column. And so you'll, for each one, you'll search for them. And if they exist in the database, you'll link them up to that existing record. And if not, you'll let the app know that it's a new child. So from here, we are ready to approve the COE. So we will approve it and advance it to the next reviewer. So again, we can see all of the steps that we've gone through, and we're changing our entry. The next entry will be changing to reviewed and the date and time that we're doing that. So now that COE has been advanced all the way to your final reviewer at the state level. So at this point, they would review the COE and do the things that they need to do the final approval on it. So that status is reviewed. And they'll go through a similar process that you've done to do the final approval and sign and date and approve that COE. So that is the, I'll go ahead and approve this one so we can just see what it looks like when we do the final approval. And we can approve COE. So in addition to approving, anyone who is reviewing COEs can also delete or reject them. When you reject a COE, it's going to go back. So that's a way that you can send it back to the recruiter to have things corrected if there's something that isn't right. So if I click reject, you'll notice that our status is changing to rejected. And when it moves, instead of advancing forward and being approved, it's going to get rejected and go back to, so that you can get it back to the recruiter and they can fix any issues that you have. So if you are rejecting a COE, you definitely want to enter some comments about why you're doing that so the recruiter will know and they can address those issues. So to approve it, I'm just going to click approve COE. And that COE is gone. So when you're working in the COE draft view, which is where we're approving COEs, that's the only thing we're doing in COE drafts is approving COEs. If there's nothing that you need to approve or review, this is what it's going to look like. So there is a filter where you can show all draft COEs, but so if I check that, it's going to show me any, COEs in my database that have not been approved. But if you want to see only those that you need to work with, kind of like that requires attention filter that we were looking at, you can uncheck that, and any COEs that show up here will be COEs that you need to approve. So let's just talk about navigating this version of the app a little bit. Since we don't have any COEs to approve here, I'm going to use the view menu to go back to my COE menu. So COE is where I am entering and searching for and working with COEs. COE draft, again, is where I'm approving or reviewing COEs. So the only thing I'm doing in COE draft is reviewing and approving COEs. So over in the COE view, we can find the COE that I just approved. Here it is. We see the status is accepted. It's displayed here. So that's the same information we were just looking at, earlier. So our COE status. If we wanted to find a COE, the search here, we'll just click search to find a COE. So you have a whole bunch of options for searching, and they're very similar to what we've already looked at. It's just laid out a little bit differently. So if you have student or family information, you can search using the family information. If you have a name, if you have an ID number, you can type in an ID number for either a COE or a student and search that way. If you have a student name, you can click over on the student tab and search for a student's name. And you can type in a full name or a partial name and click do search. That's going to show you all of the COEs that match your search criteria. So from here, you can double click or highlight and select COE. Before we do that, let's look at a couple of other options over here. So you can enter a date and find COEs that have been approved on or after that date. And just clicking do search will find those. So if I say here, enter a date and do search, it's going to show me all of the COEs that were approved on or after that time. And here are my 2 COEs. You can scroll over to see more information about them. And again, from here, I can just highlight and double click or highlight and click select COE to view that COE. And then the last option for finding COEs here is under incomplete COEs. So incomplete are going to be COEs that you need to do something with as a recruiter. We can do search here and find all of the incomplete COEs. So if you find one that you own, scrolling through here, you can select it and double click or double click or select it and select COE. So let's find one of those that I was just working on. So I'm just going to double click, and here is the COE that I created earlier. If you have multiple search options, you have navigation arrows, so these will navigate through your search results. So just moving forward, one or all. We talked about the plus sign that creates a new COE. The minus sign will delete a COE. When you delete a COE, it will go into a queue, and someone at the state level will approve that or reject that delete. The exception would be if you were a recruiter and you created a COE and you have not submitted it. If it has an incomplete status, you can delete that COE. Maybe you created 2 and you only needed to create 1, and you need to delete that empty extra record, so you can delete those. Then you have a check mark and an X, so those will save and cancel edits. If they're grayed out, then they're not going to perform, you know, an action. They're unavailable right now. So if I created a new COE, you would see those become available. Then, you know, we already kind of navigated a little bit through here. The different sections of the COE have different buttons at the bottom, so you can navigate through those. And we looked at viewing the log that's available over here to the right. You have two filters, show incomplete only and show approved only. They do that. So show incomplete only is going to, when you search and you scroll through your search results, it's going to only look at COEs that have an incomplete status. And similarly, show approved only, when you scroll through, it's only going to show you COEs that have gone through that final approval and have a status of accepted. So that is kind of the COE process. I'm going to go ahead and just, because we looked at this in the other version of the app, I'm going to make a new COE here just so you can see what the new form looks like. So when we make a new COE, we use that plus sign and we fill the form out. And you have the same sections to go through. We've performed the same checks. So if you select an item that requires comments and then don't enter any comments, we're going to remind you when you try to submit. Then when you add children to the COE, you use the new enrollment button. You'll get a blank form, so you can enter that student's information. And then you can update record to save that. So let me actually enter one so you can see how that goes. Okay, and then we can update record to save that. So now I have 2 students on that COE, and so selecting one will show you their form. All right, so I haven't seen any questions come up from anybody in the chat or any raised hands or anything. So I'm just going to go through a few more things real quick, just to help you navigate the app. So the record menu is just, it basically does what the buttons do down here. It's just shortcuts. So instead of clicking the plus sign to create a new COE, you can use Control A. They're just keyboard shortcuts. And instead of using the arrow buttons to navigate through your search results, you can use Control N and Control P. Procedures, you will, in procedures, need to do something that isn't currently available. Let me see here. let me fix this so that we can actually see what it looks like. So under procedures, you will need to upload changes. So this is how you're going to transfer your data. We can do any amount of data entry, and we can enter one COE, we can approve one COE, we can enter or approve or advance, review any number of COEs. So if it's 1 or 50, all of that is data is saved on your machine, on your computer. And to actually transfer your data so that it's available to other people to review or have access to, you have to do an upload. So upload changes, when you click on that guy, it's going to check for updates to the software, and then you will be prompted with an upload window. So you'll just begin your upload, and it will transfer, it will take all of the changes that you've made since your last upload and send those to your server. And then the server is going to find all of the changes that other people have made since your last upload, and send those back to you. So it's a two-way communication. It's how you're going to synchronize your data with the server so that you have other information from all of the other users. So if you're working with MIS2000, you should do an upload at the beginning of your work session. And then if you enter data, you should do one at the end of your work session. So we have a question. Is there a difference between the two MIS2000 programs you are using? My MIS looks like this one and not the one that was first being used. Yes, I apologize for that. I thought you guys had started using the new app, and I was wrong. So I apologize for that confusion. I think you're all using probably the version that I'm showing you now. The only difference is the interface. The data is all the same. You're entering the same data. The process is all the same. It's just a different interface. We are in the process of converting our users from using the app that we're looking at to using the new app. And I apologize for that confusion. But yes, that the app that I was showing you originally is where you will be going. So it's all the same data, it's all the same process. It's just a different way to access the data. It's using the same data on your machine. So you can enter data in one and it's available in the other because it's all the same source. I hope I answered your question. Does anybody else have any questions about the apps, the app and entering COEs? If so, you can raise your hand or type it in the chat and I'll do my best to answer your question. While we wait for that, I'll go ahead and look at a couple of other things. Reports. Here you can queue records. So if you wanted to print out a COE, you can queue it. And then when we print queued records, we'll get a date range. That's going to be for the student. So this is going to show you student records rather than COEs. So it's going to be a summary of the kids on the COE. So you click OK, it's going to show you a summary of all of their enrollments and their data. Preferences, you can set the app to automatically caps lock. Then under the COE menu, you have a bunch of options. You can queue a COE like we were just queuing students. And then you can queue one or more COEs. And then when you print, it sends it to your printer. If you print preview, it will show you what the paper form would look like. So you could save this as a PDF. So you can use save and choose Adobe Acrobat and then save that as a PDF file. You can also print it. You can scroll through to see all of the different pages. So you can have multiple different COEs that you print out. So you can do one at a time, or you can do like a batch of them. When you close your preview, it'll ask you if you want to clear the queue. That's just clearing out that list of COEs that you had told MIS2000 you wanted to print. So also in here are options to queue all new COEs. So if you create a COE, it will put it in the queue automatically. Queuing all students. Similarly, we'll queue every student that's on any of the COEs that you create, and that queue again is available in that reports menu. You have another way to get to the log. So we have the view log button, but you can also view the log here. So it gets you to the same place. It's just another way to get there. You could print a blank COE. That would just be a blank, like paper COE form. And then the last thing is recertify COE, which I believe is something that you guys do yearly. Jose can share more about that process for you. So you have recertify COE. And that's pretty much everything to do with like entering COEs. So any other questions?
Marcy, thank you so much for your presentation today. For the new people at the local level, I know that was some great information and answering some questions as we go along. And as for the seasoned people, it was probably a good refresher, maybe of some of the button and the features and things that they may not be using all the time or didn't know what it was. So we appreciate your presentation today. Thank you so much. Is there any questions for Marcy about the presentation or the COE or any of the buttons or anything that she presented to you guys today? If not, call it good here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, I appreciate it.